Aloha, I'm Leon.
And I'm Malia. We welcome you today to a new episode of BackStory.
And BackStory is about our adventures and the things that went into the making of the music of Leon and Malia over the years. And so what we decided we would do for this episode and a few following this one is to talk a little bit about some songs that we were known for or are known for and how those songs came about, some which we wrote and others which we didn't write. And in doing so, we want to just talk about our, where we came from, and our backstory.
Our roots in folk music when we started out.
So going back to when we started out, which was in folk music, Malia and I had been, coming out of the '60s, had learned a lot of folk music and all that, and learned to play guitar, playing folk music as well as Hawaiian music. It wasn't really unusual that when we started to play publicly in nightclubs and in places like that, and started to travel and tour, that we would do quite a bit of folk music, and we were really happy to do so. But there was one particular song that actually we became quite well known for, and in fact we used to perform this at practically every performance we did. And we usually got a standing ovation at the end of that performance, whether it was in a small nightclub, an intimate setting, or even in a large arena like at that time the HIC arena, which is the Blaisdell now. So this particular song had a particular part of it that people were quite surprised by.
Well, let's talk about Donovan. He's the one who wrote the song.
Okay, so Donovan wrote this song. And at the end of the song, and the song, by the way, is called Hurdy Gurdy Man. And at the end of the song, he uses his vibrato pretty heavily. And vibrato, of course, is a singing technique. And so he used it pretty heavily. And when we were listening to the song and we started to do the song, Malia was doing some vocalizing.
I was, because I had done a lot of work in musical theater. So I was used to learning all kinds of techniques to do the various musicals that I had been involved in. So one of my favorite techniques has to do with singing and laughing at the same time.
Demonstration?
Demonstration, okay. So, for example, a vibrato, we would be going, ah, but for the laughing and singing staccato, it's aha.
Right.
And that's what we translate.
And you hear that in opera and those types of performances. Yes. And so what we did with Donovan's vibrato at the end of his Hurdy Gurdy Man is we took it and we emphasized it. We kind of
overplayed it, really.
Yes. Into a staccato.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Right. So, do you want to sing it with me, or you want to try it out?
Yeah. So the song started like this. Thrown like a star in my vast sleep, I opened my eyes to take a peek, to find that I was by the sea, gazing with tranquility.
Here we go.
'Twas then when the hurdy-gurdy man came singing his songs of love. Then when the hurdy-gurdy man came singing his songs of love. Anyway, so that's how it goes. And so, as I said, we sang this song literally hundreds of times all over the place and never really got tired of it, and the audience always loved it.
Right.
So wherever we were, this song was our trademark.
Yes.
And showstopper.
A few years ago, we sang it at a folk festival right here in Hawaii with some friends.
Right, a retro folk music festival concert that we did with a bunch of friends here on Oahu. And so we're going to play a video for it of it right now.
So let's watch for the video. Hurdy Gurdy Man.
I opened my eyes to take a leap, to find that I was by the sea, gazing with tranquility. 'Twas then when the hurdy-gurdy man came singing songs of love. Then
Gurdy Man came to sing songs of love. Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Gurdy sang. Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Gurdy sang. Histories of ages past, under the light of the shadows cast, down through all eternity, crying of humanity. It's then when the Hurdy Gurdy Man comes singing songs of love. Then when the Hurdy Gurdy Man comes singing songs of love. Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Gurdy sang. Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Gurdy sang. Here comes the holy, holy man, singing songs of love. Holy, 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 holy sang. Felt like a storm on the sea. I opened my eyes to take a peek. Found that I was by the sea, gazing with tranquility. 'Twas then when the Hurdy Gurdy Man came to sing the songs of love. Then when the Hurdy Gurdy Man came to sing the songs of love. Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Gurdy sang. Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Gurdy sang. Here comes the holy, holy man, and he's singing the songs of love. Holy, 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 holy sang. Holy, 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 holy sang. Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Hurdy Gurdy, Gurdy sang. Here comes the holy, holy man, singing songs of love. Holy, 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 holy sang. Holy, 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 holy sang.
One of the things that we have been doing as folk musicians, of course, was touring and playing in various places all around the world.
All over the world.
Yes, and particularly in 1977, we embarked on a tour across America, and this particular tour took us from the West Coast to the East Coast of America, and we stayed for a couple of months in each place, and just sort of got a lay of the land. And at the end of that tour, we returned home, and we were quite inspired by what we saw and what we felt along the way. And so in 1979, 78 and 79,
Wow.
we recorded an album, and we started it in Los Angeles and then finished it here in Hawaii.
True.
But the album was actually quite an ambitious album, and if you listen to the entire thing, you'll find that it has all kinds of different styles and production work on it, lots of musicians. So this particular song, we titled the album Heartland, and this particular song is titled Heartland. It's the title song of the album, and it's about touring and getting a feel for the place that we're at. And we realized that no matter where we were, the aloha aina, this, we call it, it's like a Hawaiian term, but actually this is prevalent every place, that the people of the land actually have a special relationship to their land. And we call it aloha aina, others call it other things. But
it's a landscape feeling of the emotions that go with the place where they live, whether it's the prairies or the trees or the water or the oceans.
Yes, and so this particular song, Heartland, talks about our various places we've been. So we start with the desert. The first song is about the desert, and it goes rising steadily out of the desert. Feel the hot Santana wind. And so we use the word Santana because it's actually, they call it now the Santa Ana winds, but contracted
are
it's
hot.
Santana.
Yes.
And it's the desert wind that comes out of the Southwest America, out of Arizona and New
Yeah.
Mexico and places
California.
like that. In California. And so that's the first verse. The second verse is about the Rocky Mountains and
Oh, my.
the high mountains and these incredible, beautiful vistas up in the mountains.
Well, especially where the eagles, they
the
were
eagles
so,
fly.
Eagles fly.
Right.
Woo!
Yeah, and so there's this other impression about the ancient calls that are resounding off the mountains. And
But
then,
that also is like we have here, resounding calls, what you were just saying,
Right.
off the mountains.
Right.
Whether it's here or it's in the America, in those
Right.
mountains, or some other mountains in other parts of the world. It's the land connected to the people.
so like what Mauna Kea is to us here
Yes.
is the same as, say, the Utes up in the Rockies.
Right.
And other people
Mount
live other
Fuji in
places.
Japan.
Right, and then there's the plains. After
Yes.
the Rockies, we go to the plains, and that has a whole another dynamic. In fact, one of the places where we played was in Kansas City, Missouri. We were there for a couple of months, and I remember during the summer months, we're looking out over the prairie. We were actually in a fairly high hotel building in Kansas
yeah.
City, but we could see off in the distance thunderstorms going by, these
Massive,
lightning storms
massive.
and things like that. And every once in a while, cyclone warnings would come over on the radio or the TV. And so this, we talked about this whole feeling of this ageless thing going on with the prairie and its dynamics.
Yes.
And then, of course, all the other places we were at, the Mississippi River and
It's
the
huge.
Missouri
Massive.
River.
And the Atlantic Ocean.
The Atlantic Ocean, and then the roughness and the
The power.
power of
the
the
surging
of the-
that would have.
right, and then of course the great northwestern trees.
Oh, that always appeals to me.
Right,
Yeah.
and so the Northwest is this incredible forests, and in Northern California,
Right.
places like that. So these are the things that we wrote about, and what we're saying here in this song, and is that no matter where we go, the land is there, and
And
what
speaks to
we're
us,
hearing.
speaks to our heart.
Right. So it starts out with saying, all around me lies the heartland. And
Yes.
toward the end it says, deep within
In me lies the heartland.
So this recording was done here in Honolulu, and we had a number of our friends play on this, and I did
Fabulous,
most of the
wonderful
arrangements.
people.
Yes, I did most of the arrangements. Another friend of ours called whose name is Charles Blaker, who used to be a session composer and music director for films in Los Angeles, and so he helped arrange the string parts and some of the other parts. We had Henry Capono from Cecilio and Capono playing electric
At the time,
guitar.
Right. Now he's very
and also-
famous on his own.
Right, of course. And then Dennis Rasmussen, our drummer from the Purple Onion, where we were years before, and played with us for several years here in Hawaii as well.
Uh-huh.
He's a famous jazz drummer, and
Right.
so he played on this. And then another person named, there's a solo part in here for oboe, part that I wrote. And a guy named Tom Boyd recorded this. Now, Tom Boyd has since become one of the foremost oboists in the world. And he's known, he's done 1,400 films. He's recorded soundtracks with
He's done
John
very
Williams
well.
and all
Yes.
of the Disney musicals and things like that. So he's done very well. And then this great piano player from Hawaii named Dennis Grau. Dennis plays this incredible piano, so he's on several cuts of that particular album. But anyway, so this is the album, and it starts off like this.
Rising steadily out of
The next song we'd like to do is called Island Music. And it was a song that was written for the very final cut of the album Heartland. But what we wanted to do at this point was to emphasize the fact that we return home. After our travels all over the place, we return home to our roots.
Yes.
And the roots is our island music. And we're not talking just about the music of our backyards, and which I grew up more in the backyard style and in family gatherings, luau's and things like that, where uncles and aunties just got the ukuleles and guitars out
Right.
and just started playing this fantastic music. So as a young child, I was watching all of this, and then of course I started to play music as well. In fact, my grandmother gave me her guitar. I started playing the ukulele at 7, and my grandmother gave me her guitar when I was 10.
Right.
And so I started playing with her guitar at 10. I'll come back to that a little bit. But Malia grew up in a different style of island music.
Yes, my style was more into the, there was Hawaii calls, then there were, it worked its way up through Waikiki music, I would say, more Waikiki
So Malia
music.
grew up on Oahu, I grew up on the Big Island.
Right.
And so her exposure was most of the music that was being played in the hotels.
In the
and all
hotels
that,
and the
which-
hapahauli and that sort of
Right.
thing, you know.
And the amazing
So-
thing about the music of that time was a strong influence of jazz in Hawaiian music. And if you
True.
listen to Hawaiian music now, you find our players, our brothers and sisters playing music, are playing all these fancy jazz chords, and that comes out of the 30s and
That's
40s.
true.
And people like Pops Pahinui and all that
Right.
were really great jazz musicians. So all of these influences, Hawaiian music is actually not just the slack key background, although that's powerful, but it's all the other things that Hawaiians adapted and brought into the music.
You're
And
very
so,
good at
so that's
that.
when we're talking about we're talking about that. We're talking about island music is all of that.
Right.
Although this particular song, we basically stuck to more of a slack key style. Now we have several people who play on this. One of my influences was a man named Arthur Lyman, and Arthur Lyman was one of the persons who pioneered this musical style called exotica. And that's when they had all of these different really instruments, and they had this whole forest feel and,
A
bird
real
calls.
jungle, Pacific feel
right.
to it.
And so he was a vibe player as well as basically he used mallets. So he played marimbas and vibes and all these
Right.
wonderful things.
Right.
And he was really a great jazz musician in that style of Lionel
Very
Hampton
famous.
and
Yes.
all that. But he got into this exotica thing, and he recorded over 20 albums
Was it really?
of exotica music, and he was fantastic. Anyway, so he was a friend of mine, helped me early on in my career here on Oahu. And so, but then I remembered that when my grandmother gave me her guitar when I was 10, it was tuned to slack key. So, and one of the first songs I learned to play was because it was tuned like that. It went like this. Anyway, it was Yellowbird by Arthur Lyman. There's a couple of other musicians on this song. One is Keola Beamer,
Of
who
course.
was, of course, is a premier slack key player.
Yes,
And so he came in,
Hawaii's
he
best.
played on this song for us, played slack key. And then he also did this incredible vocal.
Yes,
on
he
it.
did.
He did
Yes.
this background vocal that still today, I don't know how he did that. But
Right.
it's just incredible on the recording.
Well-
and then we had a good old friend of mine, Earl Tillman, who was known as Black Eagle, who was actually a conga drummer. Very, very excellent musician. The father of Salam Tillman, who later became the drummer of Mana'o Company.
Well, you see, we all
So
connect
it's all
here
tied
together,
in
right?
together. But so
And-
this is the song Island Music. Yeah.
The lost version.
Sometimes when I get lonely and I'm far away from home, songs of yesterday. And in my dreaming I can see the scenes of long ago. And in my dream I hear the music play in the island way. And there's something about old time island music. Oh, the melodies will steal your heart away. It's that warm Pacific old time island music. And it makes you wish that you could always stay and sing to me my island music. Tell the stories we hold deep. Let that island music echo through the years. At times you're feeling down or simply uninspired, just listen to the songs we like to play. And if you hear the gentle sound of surf upon the sand, then let the music carry you away in the island way. And there's something about old time island music. Oh, the melodies will steal your heart away. It's that warm Pacific old time island music. And it makes you wish that you could always stay and sing to me my island music. Sing to me all day long. Sing that old time island music till I'm cold. Sing that old time island music till I'm cold. Sing that old time island music.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you will join us again next time on BackStory.
Until then,
Aloha.
aloha.